Conscious Media. Welcome to Independent Americans. Welcome to episode 329. I'm your host, Paul Rieckhoff, and welcome to Coronado, California. Beautiful Coronado Beach, California. Just across the way from San Diego and just down the street from the home of Navy Special Warfare Group, the Navy SEALs, and where they do BUDS training for SEAL recruits. It's a place that builds warriors. It's a patriotic place. It's a fun place. And it's where I am this week to give you the latest of what's going on in the world of news, politics, and culture. My wife is out here for some work. I'm tagging on some work as well. And my kids are on spring break. And even in the midst of all this, now is most definitely a time to stay vigilant. And coming up, you'll hear my conversation with the great Garry Kasparov, chess grandmaster, world champion, chess prodigy, but also an incredibly important political activist, humanitarian, and voice of conscience and reason. A guy who's been out in front on Putin for years, a ferocious advocate for Ukraine and freedom around the world, and maybe one of Putin's biggest pain in the asses. We're also going to talk a little chess and more. And as I walk in Coronado today, you may see some military aircraft, you may see some military seacraft, you may see some fighter planes, you may see some helicopters, because this is definitely a military town, and it's awesome to be back here. I've spent a lot of time here over the years. Also, I always ask, where are you and how are you? I've told you where I am, and I've also been taking in a lot of other things I love about San Diego, including a Padres game at Petco Park last night. The Padres are the best team in baseball right now and had an 11-game home winning streak that unfortunately got broken last night in a tough 2-1 extra inning loss to the Cubs. But I can't recommend Petco Park and the Padres enough. It is one of my favorite ballparks in America and another reason to love San Diego. This whole area is truly an American gem. It's a place that values patriotism, values sacrifice, and values service, just like you if you're listening or watching to this show. So before we get to Garry Kasparov and take you on my walk around Coronado, let's get after it. My top topics. In order to survive BUDS training here in Coronado, you have to be a lot of things. You have to be tough. You have to be disciplined. You have to be a great teammate. You have to be reliable. What you cannot be is sloppy and incompetent. Sloppy and incompetent. That is absolutely unacceptable in Navy SEAL training, in the teams, and throughout the military. But unfortunately, it's been acceptable lately in Washington, and especially in the leadership circle that surrounds Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of Defense, who continues to be most notable for one thing: sloppiness and incompetence. And this week was no exception. Every week, there's an almost hilarious, if it wasn't so dangerous, example of just how sloppy and incompetent these guys are. It was reported this week that Trump made a phone call. He made a phone call to a guy who wasn't expecting his phone call. It seems he accidentally called former General and National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster. And when he called H.R. McMaster, he said, "Henry?" And H.R. McMaster said, "No, not Henry, H.R." And he said, "Who is this?" And he said, H.R. McMaster. And he says, "McMaster? Why the fuck would I want to call McMaster?" Turns out that the White House, in its infinite sloppiness and incompetence, actually connected Trump with the wrong McMaster. He was trying to contact Henry McMaster, the governor of South Carolina, who was a close ally of Trump. Instead, his team connected him with H.R. McMaster, who had just finished appearing on 60 Minutes and continuing to criticize the president. This stuff is not funny. This stuff is serious. And sloppiness and incompetence is dangerous, especially when it comes to national security, and especially a couple weeks after they accidentally added an Atlantic editor to a Signal chat discussing classified information. This is who they are. But never forget that the sloppiness and incompetence is not only unacceptable, it's dangerous. Sloppiness and incompetence does cost lives, not just in the Pentagon and national security, but also when it comes to our wildlife and our beautiful Mother Nature. So check this out. Coronado's great, but it also has a problem with sewage. Apparently, all too often, sewage and chemicals get poured into the water and they have to close the beaches. Well, we haven't been able to go into the water for the last few days, and unfortunately the same is true for the Navy SEALs and others who try to use this area. It's kind of how America feels right now. Like we've got this beautiful and amazing thing that a bunch of assholes continue to screw up and contaminate. That's true throughout the federal government, and maybe especially at the Pentagon. So there's breaking news this week that a number of senior officials at the Pentagon have been escorted out, which means they've kind of gotten the perp walk. So a couple of folks who work in the Pentagon and report to Hegseth and were brought in by Hegseth, apparently, allegedly, they were recently involved in leaking the information about the fact that Elon Musk was scheduled to come to the Pentagon to get briefed on China war plans. You may remember it was the biggest story in America for about 30 minutes before some other crazy shit happened. But the world found out that Elon Musk was scheduled to get a briefing on China at the Pentagon. Trump apparently himself didn't approve of this and lost his shit. But nevertheless, they are being held accountable for that, for leaking that information to the press. A guy named Dan Caldwell, a guy named Darren Selnick, and another guy were escorted from the Pentagon and are allegedly in some deep shit. Now, that's important. But here's what's important to note. They were not held accountable for Signalgate. They were not held accountable because one of them, at least one of them, Dan Caldwell, was on that infamous Signal chat with Mike Waltz and Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard and Marco Rubio and others. No, they weren't held accountable for that, for disclosing operational security information that could have endangered the lives of our troops. No, they were held accountable by at least this group for leaking information that Trump didn't like. Now, of course, that may also be illegal. It may also be criminal. It may also be worthy of punishment. But in the grand scheme of things, it may not be even close to the worst of what we will find out was involved in Signalgate in the days to come. And here's the more important part. If these three guys were held accountable, why isn't Hegseth himself being held accountable? Are they only going to fire junior guys? Or are they going to hold Hegseth to a different standard than he holds the guys he leads to? Sloppy and incompetent and dangerous. Watch this space, folks. As you hear my voice, I hope you are also watching my face on YouTube. We're continuing to expand these walk and talk episodes and push the boundaries of podcasting and keeping it real. Now, with that is going to come some technical problems at times, so thank you for sticking with us. Oh, there's a trolley. But that's the good part. Occasionally you get a surprise because this is a real podcast. I'm not doing this from behind a desk or in some fancy studio. I'm going to take it out into the streets and walk and talk wherever I am. And that's going to come with some technical challenges. We're going to use some special AI software to try to smooth out the noise and the wind. But in the meantime, I hope you'll bear with us. I hope you'll share your feedback, and I hope you'll follow us on YouTube where you can see where I am and hear, for example, Navy SEALs riding on motorcycles, trolleys, seagulls, and fighter planes overhead. But I'm going to take you outside the confines of the standard studio space and bring it out into America. Our brilliant creative director and my co-producer on this show, Chris Rosenthal, has a great line. Don't chase the bouncing ball. Don't chase the ball. The Democrats, especially recently, have been chasing the ball, chasing whatever ball Trump throws out there, while really important stuff happens below the surface. So I'm going to warn you, don't chase the bouncing ball. As you hear a fighter jet overhead here in Coronado, I want to remind you that in the midst of all the other chaos, something else really important happened involving our national security. This week, the Senate confirmed a brand new chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That is the senior-most military leader over the entire military, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. That's the job that was once held by Admiral Mike Mullen, most recently by General Mark Milley and C.Q. Brown. But this week, with almost no coverage, Senate confirmed General Caine, raising Caine to be Trump's chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Now, this is noteworthy for a number of reasons. Mostly because he purged the previous chairman of the Joint Chiefs, C.Q. Brown, who was put in place by Biden. But usually, chairmen of the Joint Chiefs of Staff are kept in place and are apolitical. But Trump didn't like C.Q. Brown, didn't feel he was loyal enough, and removed him. So we had no chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and now we have someone in General Caine who Trump feels much more comfortable with, which means we should all feel less comfortable with him. So as aircraft continue to come in here over Coronado, another thing is happening regarding our military. Trump's purge of opposing military voices continues. This week, while most of the world was following the bouncing ball, you probably didn't see that the colonel, that is a Space Force leader at Greenland, on the island of Greenland, was removed for her controversial comments. They were controversial because she said J.D. Vance didn't exactly speak for all Americans when it came to Greenland, which is not really that controversial, not really that outlandish, but for Trump, it's a sign that there's no loyalty there. So the week after he was advised by 9/11 conspiracy theorist and radical crazy person Laura Loomer to fire General Hawk as the head of the NSA and Cyber Command, they've now fired the colonel at the U.S. military base in Greenland. Here comes another aircraft, and here comes another topic. My final top topic for this week is one that really should be a top topic for everyone. And it's below the radar, but it's also absolutely essential. Did you know that this week coming up on April 20th, Trump is due a report from the Pentagon about whether or not to invoke the Insurrection Act, whether or not to deploy U.S. forces on U.S. soil to deal with so-called insurrection issues. That could be applied to the border. It could be applied to the migrant crisis. It could be applied to, protests at Tesla dealerships. There's really no limit to what it could be applied to if it is invoked. Now, we've talked about constitutional crises. This is maybe the biggest move that Trump could make, and the most controversial, and the most dangerous, and the most damaging. And most Americans don't even know it's happening. Now, maybe it'll be a big nothing burger. Maybe it won't be. And that's why now, especially, we all need to stay vigilant. Told you, aircraft are regularly moving across Coronado and across San Diego Bay. Military aircraft, of course. They're keeping watch overhead, and you should be keeping watch where you are. Not sure if you can hear me, but if you can, I've still got some issues that you need to track on that you can't let fall below your radar. Finally got to a place that's a little less windy to reflect on something pretty serious that was below the radar this week. 2 U.S. troops, likely Marines, from an area not far from where I am now in Coronado, were killed on the Mexican border this week. It appears their vehicle rolled over in what was an accident. Now, in normal times, this would be front page news. But in times like this, it hardly gets even noticed. But 2 brave Americans, and maybe a third who's in critical condition, risked their lives in defense of this country. It's a reminder that even training is dangerous. And every deployment, whether it's to a combat zone or to the border, is dangerous. And any time a politician tells you they want to deploy men and women into harm's way, you should be cautious. Because every time they deploy men and women into harm's way, there is risk. And this week is a painful reminder of that. My hearts go out to those families and to the guys and gals in their units. And if you want to help, as I often remind you when there are military casualties, check out Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. The great helpers at TAPS are always running in when others need them most, and that's in times like this, as 2 families get that unimaginable knock at the door this week. 2 families that could be just miles from where I'm standing now. All right, So moments like this are why I want to do this show in video and live, because you might catch something like that. Navy aircraft coming into Coronado, independent Americans, is bringing it to you in ways that nobody else has. No other podcast is going to sit in the flight path of military aircraft, but we will. Something else happened down on the border that is below everyone's radar. Most folks don't even know what happened, but this week, Trump seized a 60-foot strip of land along 3 border states along the Mexican border. And he sent military troops in there to hold it and claims it's federal land. He's doing this maybe in part so he can circumvent Posse Comitatus. I'm screwing up the name, but what it means is it's the restriction on using federal troops on U.S. borders. This, if he makes the land federal, that 60-foot strip of land along the border, will allow him to use U.S. military troops to detain migrants. This is an edge that he is pushing us to and across that is unprecedented, that has not been done before, and is an area you should definitely keep on your radar. Also this week on almost nobody's radar, VA Secretary Doug Collins, radical Doug Collins, called by our friend Lindsay Church deceitful Doug Collins, announced he's firing some more veterans. Every week it's more veterans fired, and this week it's another 300, maybe as many as 600, who work in the VA's payroll services division. Now, this is at 60 offices all across America, and the cuts are supposed to save the VA $15 million. Now, $15 million is a lot of money to me, it's a lot of money to you, it's a lot of money to most Americans. But it's actually not that much money to the VA, because the overall VA budget is over $350 billion. So why make such a big deal out of firing 600 people that only saves us $15 million? Well, it's because it definitely makes Trump happy. And it definitely looks like they're firing people for the sake of efficiency. But what they're actually doing is continuing to purge the federal government of really quality people, more than half of which at the VA are probably veterans. And maybe, even more importantly, they continue to destroy morale, retention, and recruiting at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Every week, I talk to friends of mine who work at the VA who just want to wake up and serve veterans. But instead, they have to wake up and check their email to see if the Elon Musk Doge guillotine is coming for them. That is bad for our veterans. It is bad for our national security. It's bad for our economy. It's bad for our unemployment. And it is not leadership. And it is not efficiency. A final issue that unfortunately was on the radar for a little bit and then went way below, that really struck home for me since we've been talking a lot in this episode about aircraft. This week in New York City, there was a tragic and terrible helicopter crash that took the lives of a Navy SEAL pilot who likely trained not far from where I'm standing, and the lives of a family of 5 from Spain, including 3 kids. Now, this is a local story that became a national one, and I think for good reasons, because I've been sounding the alarm on unregulated and poorly regulated aircraft in New York City and around the country. These aircraft that you hear overhead right now, they are definitely being regulated and being tracked, especially if they're anywhere near that military base right up there. So these unregulated helicopters in New York City could hit a soft target like a school, or a historical target like, I don't know, the 9/11 memorial that's right there, or a critical piece of infrastructure like the Brooklyn Bridge. This is more than a local issue. This is more than a pollution and noise issue. Although it is a pollution and noise issue too, it is a true national security issue. Our feckless New York Mayor, Eric Adams, won't do anything about it. Our also feckless New York Governor, Kathy Hochul, won't do anything about it. Maybe it's something President Trump will actually do something about. Maybe if only because one of these unregulated helicopters could make a turn and smash into Trump Tower. But remember, you heard about this issue here first. Before it became an international or national security issue, I warned you that unregulated helicopters in New York City are a threat. So remember, you heard about it here first. Stay vigilant. Before we get to the amazing Garry Kasparov, one more issue that is below the radar that is related to my conversation with Garry. On this show, we've covered the fight for freedom happening in Ukraine. On this show, we've talked to brave Ukrainians and brave Americans who are standing on the line for freedom against Putin, against tyranny, and against oppression. And I've tried to bring as much light as I can to the sacrifices in the service of those stepping up. And this week, an American hero, who was also a Ukrainian hero, came home to rest. Garry, now Rocky, served for 20 years in the Marine Corps. May have trained just up the street from where I am now. He had a Bronze Star with Valor, 2 Purple Hearts, 20 years of service in multiple deployments. And he died on October 28th, fighting not in Iraq, not in Afghanistan, but in Ukraine. And as he came home, he was saluted by the people of his community and by the people of Ukraine for his sacrifice, for his leadership, and his heroism. Americans continue to serve on the front lines of freedom in support of Ukraine, both in military roles and humanitarian ones. And we must continue to support them in any way that we can. I'll link to more information about Garry and his amazing life of service and his incredible sacrifice made on behalf of freedom. And I'll link to American Veterans for Ukraine, where you can join other American veterans and support American veterans who are standing up for freedom and standing up for Ukraine, and making sure that our American brothers and sisters who are fighting and dying will not be forgotten. Rest easy, Marine. Semper Fi. Slava Ukraine. As we continue our walk on Coronado Beach, I am now very happy to be bringing you a guest that I kind of dreamed would be on this show one day. When I started this show 5 years ago, there were some guests I really hoped that one day might join me on this show. And that is definitely true for our amazing, courageous guest in this episode. Garry Kasparov. I was trying to explain to my kids how big of a deal Garry Kasparov is. And I said he's bigger than the Michael Jordan of basketball. Maybe he's the Serena Williams of chess. That was if he just stopped playing chess. But then he went on to become a political activist. He was jailed for his political views. He's been wanted dead by Putin, and he's now living in New York because he can't go back to Russia. He's one of the most important voices for freedom, for democracy, and for America. And he is a chess grandmaster. He brings that same strategic approach that he brought to decades of chess dominance to our modern politics. For years, he's been warning about the risks of Putin. He's been criticizing Democrats and Republicans, and he's been holding the line not for a party or for an ideology, but for a brighter future for our children. He's a no-shit hero, and a guy who's been playing geopolitical chess with Putin for decades. I'm honored to have him on this show. So welcome to a strategic conversation with the greatest chess master of all time. A brave voice for freedom whose work now is more important than any chess game he's ever played. If the world is a chessboard, I'm glad this guy's on our side. Welcome to a conversation with a guest who could be jailed or even killed any minute now. A true hero. Welcome to Independent Americans, episode 329er. Ladies and gentlemen, independent Americans around the country and around the world. These are trying and perilous times that can be overwhelming in the day-to-day, but it's most important in times like this to think about strategy and to think about the big picture. And I can think of nobody better to help us do that than a man that I have been honored to meet. I am thrilled and humbled to have on this show one of the most brilliant minds of our time and a true hero for America and for democracy. The great and powerful Garry Kasparov is here on Independent Americans. Sir, welcome.
Yes, thank you very much for having me.
It is such an honor to speak to you. I have followed your work, your patriotic and freedom supporting work. As I told you as we were getting ready, I also have 2 boys who love chess and consider you a hero, and they're learning about your history. And there's so much for us to get into, but maybe I can start, sir. We met briefly last year at your RDI event, which was a true pleasure for me. But can I ask you, I ask this of all our guests, Garry, where are you and how are you? In the midst of all this and all the threats to you and the people around you, how are you doing and where are you?
As of now, I am on the Upper West Side. So in 2013, I had to leave Russia for good, facing imminent arrest for my very, very peaceful protest against rising Putin's dictatorship. So I settled here in New York, so with my wife and two kids. I have two kids also from my previous life, but these two kids, they are born and raised in New York. Her daughter is 18, she's a senior, she goes to Columbia next year, and the little one is 9, so he's fourth grader. So it's the same as your oldest kid. Back in 2017, I formed here in America a 501c3 named Renewed Democracy Initiative, RDI, with an idea to explain to Americans about potential threats to democracy that may come from both sides. So I was really troubled to see that America's elections in 2015, 2016 cycle polarized the country. And that's what I know as a good scholar of history, as somebody who was born and raised on the other side of Iron Curtain and just had to deal with the very harsh Soviet realities. That democracy cannot be simply destroyed by being attacked from one side, but when it's being sieged by extremism on both sides. I always remind people that Adolf Hitler hasn't won elections in Germany back in 1932, but he got 37%, while the communists got 16%. Which meant that more than half of Germans rejected a democracy. And I saw that American democracy experienced not something similar, but again, the symptoms I didn't like. The attack on liberal democracy from the right, from rising MAGA, and also attack on the market economy from the left. And I was afraid that these two powerful forces will be tearing apart the strengths of American democracy, which was always in the middle. And the idea was also to bring dissidents, people like me, to talk to Americans about, value of democracy, because we found out that many Americans, just especially young Americans, they don't understand, they were so lucky, privileged to be born and raised in a free country, the freest country in the world. And I'm shocked to see numbers like dozens, percentage-wise. I think 30+% of young Americans, they think positively about communism without even understanding, the horrors that were brought by communism in the 20th century, and not recognizing that when you have communism, then next door you have fascism. So they like, twin brothers, but just, they fight each other, but they always, prey on democracy, on the center. So I built RDI, so it's became a very prominent organization with many people. We have former senators, we have members of the board, we have actually probably the most militarized 501c3 in America. We have two military men in our board, General Hodges and Lieutenant Colonel Windman, and we have top brass in our advisory board, General McChrystal, and actually lately we got General Milley joining us on our advisory board. And the event that you mentioned was the RDI Hero of Freedom Award last year, and we had it this year as well. And this year, the main award went to Admiral McCraven, who delivered absolutely phenomenal speech. I wish this 9 minutes of his speech, could become a sermon. Every morning, I would force Americans to listen to the speech of Admiral McCraven, which had a very simple but such, just its powerful title, "We are the good guys." I mean, not talking about geopolitics, just we are the good guys. And that's how I saw America. Again, back in the 70s or 80s, back in the Soviet Union, we looked at America as the beacon of hope, the fortress of freedom, the guardian of global democracy. And I can tell you, Evans, what's happening now, it's shocking experience for many people who left behind. So they look at America and they scratch their heads. They don't understand what's happening. How come that the country that was always, the symbol of bright future, became so much obsessed with the past, with crazy ideas, and somehow it's, instead of being a leader of the free world, became buddy with the worst dictators.
Garry, we have a lot of intersection points around RDI. I mentioned to you I had lunch with astronaut Scott Kelly right before he came to your event. Admiral McCraven, I think, is a beacon of conscience, especially for the military community. Colonel Vindman has been on this show, and I think there's this moment where, especially American military voices like Colonel Vindman, can, I hope, multiply and seize this moment where the purge can become the patriotic. But there's still a lacking national alternative narrative, right? And you've been, I think, a flashing warning sign for America for many years now. But you mentioned McCraven and the power of his words. There has been a lack of alternate narrative to Donald Trump, where we can show America, show the world we are the good guys, right? And I've been trying to highlight them on this show. But can you cut to the strategy for the two-headed monster? And I know you have intersections, that is Putin and Trump. Rather than talking only about what's happening now, if you were advising a rational president, what would you advise be the strategy for combating Putin specifically now?
Yeah, unfortunately, we are we are not dealing just with Trump, who came out of the blue. We are dealing with a trend in American politics, in American geopolitical strategy, or lack of thereof, that started probably at the end of the Cold War. While during, the Clinton years or Bush 43, so it was not felt as emergency. But with Obama, Trump, Biden, we got presidents that didn't believe in American exceptionalism, didn't believe in America's leading role, and what Trump is doing in his reckless way is just what Biden did in his feckless way, and Obama initiated this retreat from the global arena. I don't know, out of naivete or whatever the reasons, definitely lack of experience, but it created vacuum. And this vacuum was filled because there is no vacuum in geopolitics. You walk away from Syria or from Iraq and somebody else comes in. Who will come in? The bad guys. So you have China, you have Russia, you have ISIS, Al Qaeda. I mean, I'm not here to talk about all connections, because I believe most of terrorist organizations have been conceived in KGB labs. And they still have very powerful influence over this crop spread around the Middle East, that's actually even beyond that. But it's a crisis because we have someone who is not simply abandoning America's role in the world, but moreover, which is much worse, is trying to make a deal, whether it's Putin or whoever. So he's looking at every dictator as the ideal partner to make a deal, because the way Donald Trump thinks about deals, it's again, it's always transaction. There are no values. So the idea of we are the good guys just doesn't even come close to his. So it's basically it's antithesis to Trump's philosophy, which is, again, let's get rich, and the way he's negotiating now with Putin is it's not about America, it's not about Ukraine, it's not about Russia. It's about two bosses, I would even say mafia bosses, trying to find the best deal for them. And what America had to do, let's not concentrate on Trump only, because Joe Biden administration could actually finish this war back in 22 or 23 if they had a policy which said Ukraine must win. We're still dealing, the fourth year of the war, we're still dealing with the paralysis of European leaders that cannot clearly pronounce Ukraine must win. It's not about we stand as long as it takes. We have to make sure Ukraine must win, which means, in military terms or in chess terms, Russia must lose.
Yeah.
But the moment you say Russia must lose, yeah, you see they're shivering, they're trembling. Yeah. So how Russia has nukes, Putin is. Yeah, but that's it. That's why Ukraine cannot win the war. That's why we're all on the losing side, because Putin doesn't care, and he just keeps pushing. Putin doesn't understand any other language but force. And America had huge opportunities, missed opportunities during the first 2 years of war. And I'm not a military expert, but I think many of your viewers know there are thousands of tanks collecting dust in Nevada or Arizona or in California in the deserts. And these tanks, could be on Ukrainian front. America gave Ukraine 31 tanks, 31. And it's a shame. So there's so much could be done by just using the old weapons, outdated weapons that were built, and that's important, were built primarily to fight Russians.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you have an army of volunteers, great brave soldiers fighting Russians, destroying Russian military potential, and the weapon that has been designed to fight Russians and could be used now without a single risk for, or without any risk for American lives, it's still sitting, in the storages and keep collecting dust.
I've talked a lot on this show about how Biden made Zelensky play a game of Mother May I, right? It was may I have ATACMS, may I have Abrams, may I have F-16s, right? And the path to victory, was through defeating Russia, and I would argue ultimately through destroying Putin. But that is hard for Americans to say, or at least American politicians.
But before destroying Putin, I know. But let's do it step by step. This is how about destroying the bridge?
Yeah.
I mean, the fact is that the bridge is still standing there.
Yes.
The bridge, which is it's such an easy target, a looming target. So that was.
But I think this is why your voice is so important, Garry, because this is independent Americans. We've been critical of all sides. Most Americans are unhappy with the Republicans and the Democrats. I think this is the underserved majority. It's where we see so many young veterans stepping forward, the truly patriotic, who put country over any party. And I think your clear-headedness with Biden and Trump.
How I described the last elections in America:
Go ahead,
losers
please.
versus traitors.
Yeah.
And the losers lost, which they deserve to lose. But the problem is now you have traitors in power.
So let me ask you this, because again, let's stick with strategy here, right? You have been a dissident, you've been a political opponent, you're a master strategist. For most Americans right now who are watching what Trump is doing to destroy our democracy, to make us no longer look like the good guys, to compromise our moral integrity, to be a leader our kids can't look up to, in this world of overflow, right, where every 2 hours there's some crazy new shit that he's doing, how do you advise Americans to approach this strategically? What should they be focused on, and how can they maximize their limited effort to support a better future for America?
Okay. First of all, Genesis, we have to identify the threat.
Yeah.
So, and the threat is existential, I believe. So the next year, we all celebrate the 250th anniversary of one of the greatest documents in history of humanity, Declaration of Independence. And that was a foundation for the greatest democracy on Earth. And to preserve these institutions, we have to make sure that we recognize the lethal threat coming from Trump and MAGA, because they are not hiding these threats, but they know how to wrap it. So they use traditional strategy called divide and conquer, and that's why many of the attacks against the fundamental elements of American republic have been wrapped in the campaign against the Vogue, DEI, and the far left, which again, many of these policies, even I would support, because we knew that Democrats pushed too far left. But the problem is that now this has been used to undermine the fundamental freedoms that Americans enjoyed for 200, actually probably more, even just before 1776, so years, for centuries. So Trump's power is based very much on unwavering support of Republicans, of GOP, of cowardly GOP in the Senate and in the House. So you have 3 members of the House and 4 senators. That's all you need to shift the balance. The moment they lose the total control of these institutions, everything changes. Because right now, Trump is using the House, the Senate, to paralyze the judiciary, basically saying, I don't want to follow the Supreme Court decision, which is, again, unheard. So the only president who has decided not to follow, I think, was Andrew Jackson, but there was a very complicated case about Indian and white settlers in the state of Georgia back in 1832, I'm sure. Yeah. So now, what can we do to make sure that Republicans will not follow Trump sheepishly? I think it's just talk is cheap, words are cheap. We still have instruments of elections. And I think it's very important that we'll identify the most vulnerable seats in the House, in the Senate, especially in the House, because Senate is more challenging, but still look at them. and make sure that they will own Trump's policies. When Senator Cornyn, for instance, let's talk about Texas 2026, or Senator Tillis, North Carolina, when they go to elections, they will own their votes. For Tulsi Gabbard, she's, I believe, Russian asset. So for Kash Patel, for Hegseth, they have to own their votes, and they will have to be responsible for all disasters brought by Trump's nominees that do not belong there. So let's start building the momentum, because they already feel heat. You see what's happening on these town halls? They just call police. They try to walk away. They try to shield themselves from the criticism. Step up. Put more pressure on them. I mean, they're humans. Why are they doing that? Because they've been terrorized by Elon Musk, who is saying, oh, you vote against Trump? I will raise $10 million for primary challenge. Okay, that's a real threat. Elon Musk can put $10 million but for how many he can put 10 millions? And by the way, America is a big country. If we get together, we're bigger than Elon Musk. So this is, what about the big Democratic donors? So, and the simple question, you want to do good things? You want to be a good guy, whatever your name is, you're a Republican from one of the purple districts. So yes, you have a risk of a primary challenge, but you will be dead, because we'll put all the money for the main elections, and you will be killed. Because if you have a primary challenge there, you will have to go right to compete with the MAGA crazy, and you will have no chance in general elections. So if you want to survive, we're willing to support you. We will give you support. Vote against Trump. We'll make sure that you will not be toppled by the primary challenge, and we can make a deal. So we'll keep you there. If you now change the sides. Again, it's a little bit maybe of a fantasy, because it doesn't work this way, but we need to actually concentrate on things that's still in our, just at our disposal. American Constitution is still in action, but it's in grave danger. And we should remember that this is 2026 election is not just ordinary elections, because it's a moment where Trump will face a risk of losing everything. They cannot lose control of the House, because they lose power of the purse. Senate will be total disaster. So, question you should ask: do you believe that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel will follow constitutional Trump's orders when it comes to Trump losing power, considering what they did on January 6th? So, and those situations will be much murkier than a clear coup that they planned back in 2021. So it's time for us to start building this, not simply resistance, but an army of followers who clearly, connected to one goal, which is defend American Constitution, stop arguing about other things that could divide us. We need a big tent, and put more and more pressure on the Republicans on both chambers. So make
Garry,
sure that they recognize that they will be dead meat if they stick with Trump.
Garry, how do you have been nonpartisan, bipartisan? How do you view that actually unfolding? Because the Democrats are not going to save us here. We're looking for voices like McCraven and like others that are outside of the political system. People like General Milley, you mentioned. Like, I feel like in this moment, we need them to step beyond what they've been comfortable with in the past as political actors, right? So how do we actually, if the white side of the board keeps getting wiped out, right? How do we keep investing in that? Where do we invest our time between now and that 2026 place where we can actually win, right? Because it doesn't look like the Democrats can save us. Where can we win?
Look, there are Democrats and Democrats. So I hope that there's a little progress there, actually, more than a little progress. And you have more reasonable people getting in. So you see that's the on the front line of this battle, people like Senator Cali or Congressman Richie Torres or Jason Crow. So again, you hear more moderate, more reasonable voices. I'm not happy with
but you also see Bernie Sanders and AOC getting 35,000 people, right?
And I also see Schumer and Pelosi.
Yeah.
So that's if Biden is out, why they're there. So obviously, this Democrats not an answer, but we missed our opportunity. I've been arguing for a long time that America needed, just to create an alternative. And the best moment to create an alternative was in 2024 presidential elections. It's a shame that there's no one like Chris Christie or whoever, Nikki Haley, somebody had to
or Admiral McRaven.
Somebody had to, because it was a unique moment where country was fed up with the choices. Yeah, so this, look, Trump, Biden, or Kamala Harris, but Trump, you needed just, to preserve an alternative. The argument that they had is, yes, but it will end up with Trump's victory. Trump won anyway, but it could be an interesting, it's an exercise to create an alternative and also to force both parties to look, just in the center, not inward, not to the extreme wings of their parties. Because, again, let's fantasize. 2024, you had a strong candidate. Again, Nikki Haley, Admiral McRaven. I can bet you my bottom dollar, it would end up in the House. Because it was very, very clear that is just, that the strong candidate would have carried some states. Three horse race, it's very unpredictable. And again, with the level of negatives against Trump and Biden Harris, so we definitely would see the strong third independent candidate winning some states. Not enough, but it would go to the House. And then we have a story. Democrat is dead in the House. So the choice will be between the independent and Trump. And the argument I said, I heard this. Yeah, but Trump would terrorize Republicans. Let's see what happens, because it's the way it works in an American Constitution is that if it goes to the House, which happened in 1800 and in 1824, so then each state has one vote, which means Wyoming has one vote with only three members of the Congress, so 2 senators and one member of the House, and New York and California and Texas have also one vote, so 50-50 votes. But you never know what happens with somebody from Wyoming or Montana, because all of a sudden these people will have to make a choice. And going with an independent, a strong independent, who, by the way, most of them will share his views if Admiral McRaven, it could give them a chance not to be a backbench to the rest of their lives, but become a member of the administration. It's a game, but that's how you fight. People always wanted to actually have a safe passage. It doesn't work because there's no guarantee. I said, yes, there's no guarantee but if you do nothing, there's a guarantee Trump will come back. So let's recognize we have to take risks now. And I'm not telling you there's a winning strategy, because we're in deep shit. I mean, let's be objective.
Yeah.
And we just have to put pressure. Why I was so adamant condemning Schumer's decision, and even had just on my Substack, we had an interesting debate with former Congressman Mickey Edwards, who was also a former member of RDI board. So I said Schumer was wrong, Schumer was right. Again, strong arguments. And I respected Mickey's position, but the problem is you have to fight. This is not about, this is shut down or not. You understand that people will suffer greatly if democracy is infringed. And
Garry, can I ask you?
Giving, if we're at war, you don't see territory without a fight. So
Garry,
it's not about, we have to build new defense lines. No. This with Trump, fight. Make sure that that he's forced to negotiate, or let him violate the law. Let him shut down, and he'll start firing people. He'll create more enemies. And let's see how many Republicans are willing to play the game. Again, it's a racist majority in the House. So put them in a comfortable position. So so far again, this is the Democrats just don't have strategy, don't have guts, don't have his energy. Okay, what energy? Schumer. He doesn't have energy. Pelosi. I mean, you need energy. And because Trump is its animal instinct. You saw this. It's Trump and Vance versus Harris and Valls. I mean, it's how on earth she could have picked up Valls. I mean, the guy says, I'm a knucklehead on TV. So you had a choice between McRaven, Kelly, Senator Kelly, and Shapiro. So that you could pick up a governor, a firebrand, a governor of Pennsylvania, the largest battleground state, which would almost, it's guaranteed you 19 electoral college votes. So, and she went with, she was comfortable with him, but that's not how you win elections. I believe that the last chance was missed when she picked up Waltz, and September 30th debate on television. Yeah. That was the end. Because
I made a passionate case.
Was there, and Waltz was he was assistant coach. The guy's a loser. Loser, that's yeah, it's written on his face. Loser.
I made a passionate case for Senator Kelly as someone who could be strong, who could be a unifier, who could especially talk national security and crime and the border and attract independence. They obviously went in another direction. Let me ask you this, Garry. Your new project is called The Next Move. You've been kind of a Nostradamus of what is to come in America for many years now. People sometimes are paralyzed by the fear of what can be coming, or they can be motivated by it. Can you predict, as you would in a chess game or any other kind of strategy, lay out for people in simple terms, what is the scenario look like between now and the end of the year for Trump? What's he going to do? What's it going to look like? What should we anticipate in specific terms between now and, let's say, the end of the calendar year, if he continues to steamroll like he is now? What does it look like?
One correction: remove if. He will continue steamroll.
Thank you. Please.
That's it. It's
Okay.
Trump. This is did you watch the movie Apprentice?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. This is the lesson. Lesson number 3. Actually, my daughter wrote a great essay about it for her school paper, because she was kind of a critic, art critic. So never accept defeat. Always turn it into victory. Trump doesn't accept defeat. He's losing 9-0 in Supreme Court. He says, I won 9-0. He doesn't care. So you have a press secretary of the White House. She lies. I mean, she makes a statement about 10 sentences. 5 of them are lies. Not fake news, lies. Straight face. So they will keep pushing. They will be double down. So he loses here, okay. The war will be over in 1 day. No. It was kind of a figure of speech. In 100 days. No. It's just a Biden's war. He will keep creating problems and problems. So that's why Trump will never stop. He doesn't care about the wreckage of the country. I mean, at the end of the day, the guy had 6 bankruptcies. It's when somebody talks about heart of the deal, great business person, 6 bankruptcies. So do you think he cares if he bankrupts America? It will be 7th bankruptcy. And by the way, probably will be the best one, because he can make himself and people around him very rich. America is just it's the best asset to squeeze dry. That's what he did with his previous 6 bankruptcies.
So what are the biggest moves, Garry? Does he invoke the Insurrection Act? What are the big moves that you think?
I mean, think about what you're afraid of and double it. So he will do whatever. So again, it's just, and Trump will not stop until he's stopped. And this is unless people around him recognize that they are in danger, they will not abandon Trump. So again, ask the same question: Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, will they follow Constitution or Trump's orders? So Hegseth, again,
we know the answer to that, right? We see that now. They're not going to abide by the Supreme Court decisions.
That's why again, let's just put more pressure on the House and the Senate. So support the judges. I mean, this is just make sure that the judicial system survives, because there's onslaught on that. Support it. I mean, just show strength. Maybe sometimes you should go to the streets, but I think streets are less, influential in Trump's world. So I think it's more important. It's the town halls. Go on town halls and just put their feet on fire on the town halls. So just again, they have to go back to Washington and feel that that's it. Will be thrown away. And while Trump has immunity, just guaranteed by against stupid decisions, but okay, Supreme Court. So but people around him do not have immunity. And Trump, first thing Trump did, he pardoned January 6th insurrectionists. Why? Just to set a signal. You stay with me, I'll pardon you. But now the answer is, okay, you pardon them. But the next president, if we get it, so the next president will basically annul your pardons, because again, it says you already did so many things. We'll play the same ball. But also don't laugh at when Trump says third term. I remember I had a podcast with Preet Bharara just after Trump's election, and I asked you about the third term, and he said, it's ironclad. I said, are you sure? He said, absolutely. He said, Trump will talk about it. He said, no, impossible. He already is talking about it. So don't laugh. And again, anytime you go to a town hall, you meet your senator, do you support the third term or say that it's illegally constitutional? Put pressure. Make them talk about supporting or removing their support from Trump's reckless actions.
Garry, I don't know if can you stay around for a couple of extra questions
course,
for our
of course.
Patreon members, but thank you for that. So Patreon members will get an extra couple of questions with Garry. But before we do, let me ask you the final question here, Garry. What about for you? You know, if there's a scenario where things change in Russia, would you go back to Russia? You've been a powerful voice on the international stage now. You've been rising to this moment. You have this new effort. You have the RDI, but I'm sure you're constantly calibrating how you can make the most impact. But what about for you? What does it look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now?
First of all, let's inform your audience that this is probably the first time you are interviewing an indicted terrorist.
Yes.
I'm a terrorist in Russia.
Yes.
Yeah. So I warned my arrest on the charges of terrorism, and also this is in the second case is on state treason. So anytime, I'm not just going back to Russia, but in any country that have friendly ties with Putin, I'll be apprehended and sent back. Some people say now that I should be careful here in America.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you to follow up there. I mean, how do you assess the threat from Trump to name you like he just did Miles Taylor or somebody else in an executive?
Look, okay, let him do that. So I still believe this in this country. It's there is a law. So and let him. If he wants to pick up a fight, okay. I'm not trying to be careful with my words. I believe Trump is an existential threat to American Republic and to the world. So that's why, again, fighting Trump is a part of my fight for global freedom. There's a fight. That's RDI said it many years ago. It's a global fight between freedom and tyranny. The battleground now is in Ukraine, but all of a sudden we understand the battle is here as well. Because without America, the world it's not headless chicken, because Europe is now gradually waking up. But still, America must go back to its historic role to lead the free world in never-ending battle for freedom against tyranny.
Garry, you've been a powerful voice. You're a vital voice, no more important than now. Thank you for your courage, for your sacrifice, for your courage that inspires and I think is contagious, and especially in what you're building with RDI and empowering other leaders. And I also just want to credit you for picking the hard path, but I think the right path for America in the future that's beyond the parties, and talking about people like Vindman and Milley and Kelly and McCraven. I think that they represent a powerful and important part of our future and a conscience, and you've been that for us. So thank you for all your good work and for your personal sacrifice. Keep it up, man. We've got your back, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's Garry Kasparov. And for our Patreon members, you are going to get exclusive extra content with Garry, where I ask him about his favorite drink, his first car, what kind of music he likes. And yes, I did ask Garry Kasparov the waffles pancake question. So Patreon members, you're going to get that, no commercials and more. If you're not a Patreon member yet, go to independentamericans.us and sign up now. If you like this show, give us a couple bucks, help keep it going, help support the fight, and help me keep bringing conversations like Garry Kasparov to everyone for free. Now, Garry's a true helper, and I always try to highlight helpers on this show. And I want to take a minute to tell you that I'm sitting between two of maybe the most iconic and important helpers in America. Up here, to my north, is where they train Navy SEALs, some of the greatest helpers and heroes that I've ever met. My old friend Todd Bowers, who was a Marine, said to me once, they always ask you how many people you killed. They never ask you how many you saved. And I want everyone to know that Navy SEALs are obviously famous for the people they kill, but they should be more famous for the many people that they save. And on the other side, a lifeguard stand. Believe it or not, I was a lifeguard when I was a kid. My brother was a lifeguard. My wife was a lifeguard. My nephew was a lifeguard. And lifeguards are always there, holding the line for America, making sure our kids don't drown and keeping you out of the water when there's too much sewage. But I want to take a minute to thank all the helpers out there that are both Navy SEALs or lifeguards. If you've got a helper you want to share, hit me up on social media. Let me know. Tell me a story that you want me to tell others, and I might mention it on this show. Use the hashtag #LookForTheHelpers, or find me on any social media platform. We're on Blue Sky. We're on X. We're on Instagram. Maybe those guys in the helicopters are listeners or watchers of this show. Thank you for your support if you are. If not, I hope you join soon. And while you're at independentamericans.us, you can check out some Independent Americans gear. You can get it in time for Mother's Day. You can plan ahead early for Father's Day. And give us a call. Take a couple minutes and give me a ring on this phone number and let us know what you think of the show. Send me your feedback, and maybe I'll play your message or read your email in an upcoming episode of our show. So, as we head deeper into April, there's a lot to be focused on. We've got a couple more months of school for our kids. The weather's finally getting warmer. The NBA playoffs are starting, and that is going to be really, really exciting. Watch out for the Golden State Warriors. Watch out for the Lakers. Watch out for my New York Knicks. We've got the NHL playoffs happening. We had the WNBA draft last week where our friend Paige Beckers went #1. And coming up, we'll have the NFL draft. And before we wrap, I've got a couple Rieckhoff's recommendations. First off, play chess. If you weren't interested in chess before, I hope you are after my conversation with Garry Kasparov. I taught my kids chess during the pandemic on a deck when we were living in the mountains, and they were young. And thankfully, one of the greatest parts of the New York City public school system is they learn chess in school. They both started learning chess in 3K, which is actually free in New York, one of the great parts about New York City public schools. But then they learned in pre-K and K, and now they are on their school chess team, which is one of my favorite things that my kids do. Because it teaches them to think. It teaches them to consider strategy. And it's a really great way to make friends and build community. There's nothing more diverse, inspiring, and awesome than a New York City public school chess tournament where kids from all over the city, which means kids from all over the world, sit across from somebody they've never met before, shake hands, play a game of chess, and where everything is equal. The only thing that matters is how good you are at chess. And afterward, they shake hands, they make a new friend, and they move on. But even if you've never played chess before, I encourage you to try it. It'll keep your brain flowing, and it'll give you a distraction from the chaos of the world, and it will make you smarter. 2 other recommendations before we close. 1, get outside. The news and chaos can be exhausting. And if you're hearing or watching this show, you probably consume a fair amount of news. And it can fry your brain. So you may not be able to get out to an amazing public beach like this one here in Coronado, but I encourage you to get outside. Be among nature in whatever way you can, even if for just a couple minutes, to help you stay fresh, to reinvigorate you, to feed your soul, maybe to make a new friend, or just, I don't know, see some amazing flowers like these. But number 2 in Rieckhoff's recommendations this episode is get outside. My final recommendation. I talk about TV and media every once in a while on this show, and I've got to share with you what I think is one of the single greatest television shows of all time. 1923. The amazing Tyler Sheridan has done it with 1923, the prequel to Yellowstone, starring Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren, an amazing cast, a beautiful, beautiful show that is as close to perfect as I've ever seen on television. And I bring it up in part because the season finale of season 2 was just last weekend, because one of the critical characters ends her chapter and that chapter of the show by heading to California. California, the land of wonder and green and fruits and opportunity. A land that so many generations of Americans and people from around the world went to for hope, for inspiration, for a brighter future. That's California, people. I always say it, California is one of my favorite countries in the world. It's an amazing and special place. And like America itself, it takes its share of licks. But at its core, it is an incredible, amazing, invaluable place that we should all love, experience, and cherish. So maybe my extra recommendation is check out California. And if you live there, congratulations. If you don't, at some point in your life, go check it out. You try to see that Pacific Ocean with your own eyes. So I hope you like this episode. If you do, share it far and wide. Send me some feedback. If you didn't like it, blame Trump. It's his fault. Or Eric Adams, Mayor Disaster. Blame them. It's their fault. But I hope you did enjoy it. And I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Garry Kasparov. If you did, share it far and wide. And invite others to declare their independence. We're pushing the boundaries of politics and news, pushing the boundaries of podcasting. I know this is an unusual format, but I hope you like it and you can invite other people to check it out. Because independents are the future. Country over party, people over politics, adding light to contrast all that nasty and divisive heat that's out there. Invite others to declare their independence and stay vigilant, my friends, because vigilance is the price of freedom. And hope is still the oxygen of democracy. And no, you're not alone in your vigilance. We're all vigilant. And we're all in this together. I'm your host, Paul Rieckhoff. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching, and thank you for going on this walk with me in beautiful Coronado, California. My thanks, of course, to Garry Kasparov, and my thanks to you. I'm your host, Paul Rieckhoff. Thank you for listening. Until next time, down with Hamas, down with Putin, Slava Ukraine, and stay vigilant, America. And I love you, California.
Powered by Righteous Media.